The Toronto Maple Leafs are one of the most decorated franchises in NHL history. They have won 13 Stanley Cups, but the last time they hoisted the trophy was back in the year 1967, and the trophy drought that followed since then has felt endless to them. Since then, the Leafs have seen flashes of promise, but each and every season ends in heartbreak and very often in the most embarrassing way possible. So, the question on everyone's minds this year is, have the Leafs finally found their way to a Stanley Cup this season? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 97% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. The Leafs have fielded teams with plenty of offensive talent in recent years, with Auston Matthews, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander leading the charge. Despite their guaranteed regular season successes, the Leafs have continued to stumble in the playoffs, and first-round exits are an all-too-familiar scene to their fan base. Even after the curse was finally broken in 2023 with a single playoff series win, the ultimate goal still feels unreachable. But this offseason, the Leafs did make some significant changes that could finally push them over the edge. With a new captain at the helm, an improved defensive core, along with some savvy roster moves, this just might be the year they finally break the curse and once again hoist the Stanley Cup. To Leafs fans, each playoff run feels like an insufferable journey through a history of defeat. Since 1967, the franchise has witnessed countless rosters, coaches, and general managers come and go in the hope that next year is always going to be different. Yet, the team has found itself stuck in a vicious cycle of regular season success, followed by heartbreaking playoff defeat. The last 20 years, though, have been especially exasperating. From failing to even qualify for the playoffs for much of the early 2000s, to then drafting Auston Matthews first overall in 2016, the Leafs seemed set up to be contenders with Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, and Morgan Rielly becoming the core of the franchise for years to come. But despite the apparent talent, the Leafs have simply struggled to perform when it matters most. They have been knocked out in the first round for 6 consecutive years before finally breaking through in 2023 by beating the Tampa Bay Lightning in 6 games. But the euphoria didn't last long. After taking only 1 in the second round to the Florida Panthers, it was clear that although the Leafs had taken a step forward to their Stanley Cup dreams, they were still miles from true contention. One of the biggest offseason Leafs stories is a change in the captaincy, with Auston Matthews now wearing the captain's armband. This comes at the end of John Tavares' first 4 seasons with the captain's armband. The veteran Tavares was brought in to guide a promising young team, but as the Leafs core matured, it's become clear this is a different kind of team that needs a different type of leadership. Matthews has been the face of the franchise, and with his new pay grade, he has become one of the NHL's best paid. While Matthews has always been an elite scorer, there are questions asked regarding his leadership qualities after some of the off-the-ice troubles he found himself in back in 2019. However, Matthews has grown up since then, not only as a player but as a leader too. He's consistently been one of the best two-way players in the league, even garnering recognition in the Selke Trophy voting. His on-ice play speaks for itself, but now he will have to prove that he can help this team reach playoff success. The change in captaincy is not just symbolic, it is a statement by the organization that they're all in on Matthews. With a new coach, the new contract, and now the captaincy, the Leafs have essentially given the keys to the franchise over to him. Whether or not that will now translate into playoff victories remains yet to be seen, but he's been the player they bank on leading them to the promised land. But beyond the captaincy, the Leafs have made some serious moves this offseason to patch the main weaknesses the team had both at the back and in the bottom 6. So long, the alleged lack of physicality and defensive depth have been called out as reasons for the Leafs' playoff inadequacies. General manager Brad Treliving placed it as a priority to fix these issues by adding some veteran leadership while also bringing some youth into the mix in the roster. In defense, the Leafs signed Chris Tanev and Oliver Ekman-Larsson, 2 veteran defensemen. Tanev is a robust defensive presence that comes equipped with high-value playoff experience. So far in his career, he can be counted on regularly to kill penalties and block shots in critical scenarios. Meanwhile, Ekman-Larsson, while no longer the dominant player he was in his prime, provides veteran leadership and could be a key piece on the Leafs' power play. Also, the Leafs added Marshall Reifei, an up-and-coming young defenseman who will bring fresh energy into the team. Having developed under the Toronto Marlies, Rifai has been proving quite strong, and his signing would indicate that the Leafs want to balance out the heavy veteran presence with youthful talent in order to keep up with an Eastern Conference that will be tougher than ever. Up front, the Leafs also brought in Alex Steeves, a high-motor forward with potential to cut out a role within the bottom six. Steeves' speed and tenaciousness could provide much-needed depth for Toronto, particularly as they're looking to match up against tougher, more physical teams in the playoffs. In the recent weeks, the Leafs have signed restricted free agent Nick Robertson to a one-year contract, and the Leafs will most likely extend a contract offer to Max Pacioretty at the team training camp. Robertson's youthful energy and scoring potential, combined with Pacioretty's veteran experience and leadership, could be the perfect blend the Leafs need. These moves signal a philosophical shift for the Leafs. In previous years, the focus was on building a team that could dominate with speed and skill. While that formula works in the regular season, it hasn't translated to playoff success. With their new additions, the Leafs are hoping to become a more well-rounded team, capable of winning games in multiple ways. Goaltending has also quite often been a sore spot for the Leafs as of late, with spotty performances in the postseason contributing to their early exits. This season, however, there's reason for optimism between the pipes. On the plus side, Ilya Samsonov and Joseph Woll do make for a relatively promising tandem. Samsonov came into his own by becoming a steady starter last season. With a .919 regular season save percentage, he was a key player in the Leafs' first-round win over Tampa Bay. While being less experienced, Woll did look good in his limited appearances this past year and could be a more permanent solution in net. Stability in the goaltending position may indeed be what puts Toronto over the top. With an improved defense in front of them, Samsonov and Woll should get the support needed to rise above. If the Leafs get some consistent goaltending throughout the playoffs, it may spell the difference between another early exit and a deep postseason run. Of course, the biggest challenges have always been managing the pressure that comes with playing in Toronto. As one of the most scrutinized teams in the league, the Leafs at any point in time, and more so in the playoffs, are always under the microscope. This pressure seemingly weighs them down and leads to underwhelming performances when it matters most. So, adding veterans like Tanev and Ekman-Larsson means bringing in a load of playoff experience. Those are players who can handle the pressure of the postseason and can help mentor a younger core. But something feels a little different this year. There's a maturity to the lineup that wasn't there before. Matthews, Marner, and Nylander aren't the young stars of tomorrow anymore. They're seasoned vets at this point, with a whole lot of playoff experience already under their belts. They know how to take home 2 points in the regular season, but more importantly, they have learned what it takes to lose in the playoffs. Ultimately, the Leafs' success this season will come down to how well they handle the pressure. The talent is there, the roster is improved, and the leadership structure has been revamped. But if the team isn't able to perform when it matters most, all of these changes will be for nothing. So is this the season the Leafs have finally found their way to a Stanley Cup? It's difficult to say for certain. The moves of the Leafs this offseason were encouraging, and little doubt exists that this team will be built to compete at a high level. But as Leafs fans know all too well, regular season success doesn't always translate to playoff glory. There's a lot to be optimistic about. The core of Matthews, Marner, and Nylander is still one of the most dynamic offensive units in the league, and the additions of players like Tanev and Ekman-Larsson address some of the team's biggest weaknesses. The goaltending situation looks stable, and with Matthews now wearing the captain's armband, there's hope the team has finally found the leadership it needs to make the next step. But the ultimate test will come in the playoffs as usual. The path to the Stanley Cup is grueling, and the Leafs will have to navigate some of the best teams in the league to get there. With them being placed in the Eastern Conference, which is packed full of contenders, this season has to be a year in which the Leafs are at their best in navigating the playoff gauntlet. Teams like the Boston Bruins, Carolina Hurricanes, and New Jersey Devils are all legitimate threats to Toronto's hopes of a deep playoff run. If the Leafs are to make it out of the Eastern Conference, they will likely have to go through at least one, if not more, of these teams. And that's before even considering the two-time Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning, who are always a threat, despite some of their recent roster turnover. But it's one thing to have the talent to win a Stanley Cup on paper. It's another matter entirely to handle the pressure that comes with it. And no team faces more pressure due to its own fan base and the media than the Toronto Maple Leafs. Every year, the Leafs enter the season with lofty expectations. And every year, those expectations have been met with disappointment. So even though the Leafs have shown they can dominate in the regular season, Ending the 50-plus-year Stanley Cup drought will require proving they can rise to the occasion when the stakes are highest. So, will this be the year they finally break through? Only time will tell. For now, Leafs fans can only dare to dream. So, what do you think? Do the Leafs have a good chance to be a Stanley Cup champion this season? Let us know in the comments below. And please don't forget to like and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more hockey showdowns that are coming your way.